All right, I'd like to welcome you here tonight. We're just a couple of minutes away from starting the meeting, and before we do, I'd like to invite you to stand and join me in the pledge, and then Colby Fulfer will bring the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father, we thank you for this day and for all of your many blessings. And Lord, I pray over these next few moments that you'll give us your wisdom. And we know that through Scripture, wisdom only comes from you. And I pray that through that wisdom that the residents of our city would be the beneficiary of your blessings. And Lord, I pray your hand will be upon us over these next few moments. In your Son's name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. Before we move any, well, I'll call the meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of the Tuesday, June 27th Springdale City Council meeting. And I'll go ahead and ask our city clerk to call the roll.
Mayor Sprouse?
Here.
Rick Cooper?
Here.
Jeff Watson?
Here.
Mike Overton?
Here.
Colby Fulfer?
Here.
Mike Lawson?
Here.
Rick Evans?
Here.
Jim Reed?
Here.
Kathy Jaycox?
Here.
Ernest Kay?
Here.
All right, thank you. And for all of folks in our audience, again, welcome. And we do have large print copies of the agenda over here. I think Sam's got them right there in case any of you need that. We'll call the meeting to order, and I'm going to ask, I would entertain a motion. You have an ordinance to consider that should have been in your Dropbox yesterday, or actually this morning, to
Vehicle purchases.
yeah, on the vehicle purchases. Could I'd entertain a motion to approve adding that to the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Roll call.
Fulfer?
Yes.
Lawson?
Yes, ma'am.
Evans?
Yes, ma'am.
Reed?
Yes.
Jaycox?
Yes.
Culver?
Yes.
Watson?
Yes.
Overton?
Yes.
Carries 8-0.
All right, thank you. Before we open it up for comments from our residents, I'm going to ask Lance Eads, Senator Lance Eads, but you're here tonight in your chamber capacity, correct? Okay, welcome, Lance.
I would just like to pass out a piece of information and ask you all as elected officials to save the date. The Chamber is going to hold our 5th City Future program. It will be December 6th through the 8th, and we want to make sure that each of you is there to join us, participate as we have before, and we hope to have probably 140 approximately elected officials and business and community leaders to help plan what's next for Springdale across the board. So I'm going to pass this out now, and I look forward to talking with you guys a little bit more about this as we get closer to the event, and hope you get to come. So.
Thank you, Lance. We're privileged tonight to have the Executive Director of the Municipal League with us. Don Zimmerman and his wife Jan is here. And certainly welcome you all to our meeting. And Don, while you're making your way up, I want to let the council know, because I know you're going to be speaking to this just for a moment. Next Monday night at committee, we'll have a resolution for you to begin to consider having to do with the collection of online sales taxes in the state of Arkansas, which is a very important issue for all municipalities in the state, and Don may want to speak to that a little bit. But Don, I'm going to yield to you, and again, welcome to you and Jan, and thanks for being here.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. The mayor's exactly right. The online sales issue with the Arkansas Municipal League is a huge issue. It's a huge issue for businesses all across the state and cities, counties, state of Arkansas, but it's just vital that we get something taken care of. Congressman Womack's been working on that for several years, and we've been pushing that, and I think it's building momentum that people are realizing that we just have to do that to get our businesses a fair marketplace to compete with the internet sellers. And of course, when that happens, when they do have a fair marketplace, they stay in business. It, of course, results in increased revenue for the cities and the counties and the state, but it mainly keeps those people employed and those businesses operating. I'm in town today, and mainly to thank the city of Springdale and congratulate the city of Springdale and the city council for your mayor's election to be the leader of the Arkansas Municipal League. He was selected about 10 days ago now, at the annual convention that was held in Little Rock. There was about 1,300 folks there from hundreds of cities all across the state, and your mayor has been selected to lead the organization for the next year. So we were here today and talking about some of his plans and some of the league's plans, kind of getting organized. We're going to be bringing all of our league boards to Springdale next month in, I guess, the 4th week of August. And we'll be assembling here and having a lot of board meetings and doing a lot of work and getting things underway. So we just wanted to come by and say thank you. I talked to Councilmember Reed. I saw on the agenda that he's got an item to join one of our programs, and I'll be happy to stay around and answer any questions on that if need be. But we're pleased that y'all are looking at that, and we appreciate y'all's membership in the Municipal League and your mayor's leadership. So thank you for the opportunity to address you.
Thank you, Don. Thank you. Everyone up here knows, and for a lot of our residents may not know, and you wouldn't have any reason really to know, but the Arkansas Municipal League is a tremendous organization and does great work on behalf of the municipalities in Arkansas, including Springdale. We've certainly benefited greatly from our membership in the league and our participation in the league. So, Don, again, thank you for being here. You and Jan, great to see you, and be careful. And if you want to stay, you're welcome to.
Mayor, at least in the past, it's been led well.
Yeah, okay. Well, the staff, Don and the staff are great, and they, in spite of who the president may be, they'll do a great job, continue to do a great job. This is the portion of our meeting that we open up for our residents to make any comments they'd like to make to the council. We just ask that you keep your comments brief, and please come to the microphone, clearly state your name and address, and understand that we won't be acting upon anything you have to say to the council tonight. So if anyone has an item that they would like to address before the council that is not on tonight's agenda, you'd be welcome to come to the microphone at this time.
I'm Ron Minot. I live up on Callahan Mountain. It's 4900 North Graham. I hope all of you all got your email that I sent you today, because I think it's pertinent to this story. When I saw the story in the newspaper about what Lake Fayetteville is involved with the Arkansas Natural Resources Center or Commission, I said, when I saw the story, it got me to thinking about the condition of Lake Springdale and how much it paralleled Lake Fayetteville. I spoke with the Arkansas Natural Resource Commission, and they explained that they have two rules when they regulate dams. It has to be 25 foot tall, and it has to have 50 acres of water. Lake Springdale does not meet that 50-acre requirement, so they can't regulate the lake. My question is, what would happen if the concerns that Lake Fayetteville happened at Lake Springdale? As I said in my email, all the problems that Lake Fayetteville has, if you read the story, it's representative exactly like that at Lake Springdale. The problem with the lake is the lake is just not large enough for the state to regulate the lake. Although if the levee did have a tree fall at the wrong time, the resulting damage would be catastrophic. It's not imminent, but as you saw in those pictures, there are two trees that fell across the creek right there at the bridge, that if those trees had fallen on the levee, you would have a breach in the dam. And once it starts, there's not a way to stop that. I hope that the Benton County Sheriff's Inmate Program might have been able to do maintenance on the lake, removing trees, but obviously I think that project is too large for them. This leaves it up to the city, and with the upgrade at Murphy Park, it seems the city does have an interest in maintaining our parks. The question is, how long is it going to be before it started? The trees that fell, as I said, the trees that fell in the stream upstream of the bridge at Lake Springdale are a prime example. You never know when a sudden windstorm will uproot a tree. And if either of these trees had fallen out of the levee, you would have that same catastrophic problem. Some of you have said that you're working on the problem. My concern is this has been discussed for years. You spent $1.5 million between the city and the water department to repair the levee, and nothing has been done since that time to do the maintenance on it. To me, it seems it's important that maintenance of your parks and that levee there's a creek at the very bottom of it. It will erode it if a tree falls into it. So I would appreciate you all considering that at some point in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. We actually had a meeting set to begin discussing that program that we would need. I wasn't sure the Benton County option was gone. I'm still not sure of that. So we're gonna continue to explore that option. But a little flood happened here, did about $4 million of damage in Springdale, and that took us off of that for a while because we've got a lot of work to do out in Spring Creek due to that flood and around there you're talking about. And we just got word a couple of weeks ago that FEMA is going to be involved, that it was declared a federal disaster. So we're hopeful that we're working through those processes now and turning in information to both counties so that hopefully we'll know where we stand. We've got to be careful with how we spend our money and with what we know we're likely to get reimbursed for and what we're not. But it'll all figure into that plan. But that kind of got put on hold, those meetings, when Spring Creek changed the direction and everything else as a result of that flood last couple of weeks ago.
Just a side note, those two trees that are there, I don't know if anybody's noticed them. They're blocking the entire channel. So
Yeah,
somebody
we've
needs to
noticed
get in
them.
there, and
Yeah.
remove them, because if you have a rain event,
Right.
they're going to be up against the bridge.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you, Ron. All right, anyone else? An item that's not on tonight's agenda? Go ahead, sir.
This goes back to the water and the flooding event. I've already had a FEMA inspector come by my house and look at the damage in my house.
What's your name?
My name is Stephen Elston. I live at 126 Sunnydale, which is right across the creek from Bluff Cemetery. My main concern now, y'all got 30 acres of housing going in right down there at the end, and that's gonna raise that runoff from out there just exponentially. From what was an open field is now gonna be a housing project. And I would like to see something done about Mill Creek being cleaned up as to where it can flow. I walk down through there and there's trees growing out of the bedrock in the middle of the creek that hold back that water. I lost over 5 feet of real estate on the back part of my property due to that little runoff creek that separates Spencer and Sunnydale.
Have you attended a drainage committee?
No, I haven't.
Sam, which that's on a Wednesday, isn't it? They meet once a month. What is that? Okay, when's the next meeting? Why don't you give Sam your name and that address, and we're talking about Mill Creek, which runs
Mill
into
Creek,
Spring
yeah.
Creek. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
everything west of the railroad tracks comes down through there.
Because I don't know what kind of drainage easements we've got. We may need permission to get in there and do any work. They can hash all that out in the drainage committee, and if you'll give Sam your name and address, then, and contact information, then he can make sure it's on the agenda
Okay.
for the next one. Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
My name is John Hutton. I'm the on-site residential manager at Whistler Mobile Home Park. And we received a letter stating that there was going to be a lien placed on the,
It's on the agenda.
it is? Okay.
Yes, sir.
That's-
Yes, sir.
Then I'll wait for that then.
All right,
I just
thank
want to
you.
make sure it was on.
It'll
there.
be toward the end. You're going to get to sit through a lot of good stuff first. Okay. All right. Council, you've had opportunity to look over the minutes. If there are no additions or changes, I'd entertain a motion to approve them as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Item 6, procedural motions. What's your pleasure, council?
Move for A and B.
I'll second that along with the one we added for tonight.
They haven't included.
Yes. Yeah. That would be included without, okay. So the ordinance we voted to add will be included in this motion. All right? Ready?
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Evans,
Yes, ma'am.
Reed,
Yes.
Jaycox.
Yes.
Culver,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Overton,
Yes.
Wolfer,
Yes.
Carries 8-0.
All right. Item 7 is an appeal of a planning commission's decision to deny rezoning property located at 2126 South Mastery Road. And Stephen Lyle is the attorney for John Backus, and he's here to start things off on that.
Thank you, Mayor. Patsy, if you could go ahead and bring up the pictures. I think you have them in your packet. There, you have to turn sideways to see this one, but here what we've got, hopefully you can see them on your
Sideways and upside down.
Okay, if we can go, those are the, here we go. This is the property. If we can go back to the beginning. I wanted to let you see what the property looks like today. This is the property, and the reason this is important, if you can see, start there, let's leave it there for 1 second. So you can see the concrete drive, you can see one of the commercial buildings in the background. Patsy, if we can go to the next one. More of the paving that extends back to the second commercial building in the driveway and the parking area. Okay, now if we can go to the next. This is a side view of the front commercial building. There are 2 commercial buildings on the property with the overhead door there. This is the second commercial building. And this is a different view of that. Let's go to the next. This is another area of paving, which I'm going to get into more detail about why that's important for us tonight. And this is the area between the 2 buildings with the paving there. There's an office, and as you can see, there's quite a bit of storage area for equipment and vehicles. And that's the back side of one of the buildings there. Okay, let's stop there. The reason I show you that is because the reason we're here is because that is not an agricultural property. What you just saw there shows without a doubt that that is not an agricultural property. It's not suitable for farming. It's not suitable for residential development. What we have there, most of that paving you saw was not just done by my client, it was required by the Springdale Planning Commission. The key date in this situation, this property has never been zoned, so it came into the city like all properties do as A1 property. When my client sought to expand one of his buildings, he was told he had to go to the Planning Commission for approval. And that was in October of 2015. The Planning Commission approved the expansion, and they required him to do all that paving that you see there. From that point forward, this property became unsuited for anything other than a commercial property. There's no way that you can now go in and turn what you just saw there into a residential property or an agricultural property. 3 of the roughly 4, about 3 acres of the 4.5 acres have already been developed. I also want to respond. I know we had some we had some city council members at the Planning Commission meeting, and I think it's important that I address some things that really stuck with me after that meeting. You know, look, if you decide that this should remain agricultural property in spite of my best efforts, then that's one thing. But there were a lot of things said about being a bad neighbor
Hey,
that
Steve, I'm
Yes.
sorry to interrupt you. If you'll pull that microphone toward you, we
Okay.
might get a little less feedback. We're
Closer,
getting some
okay.
feedback. Yeah,
All right.
that's good.
From 2015, starting in January through when that expansion was approved in October 2015, there were about 6 or 7 times when city officials were out on this property for building inspections, fire inspections, issuing building permits. The planning department came out on site before they recommended that the expansion be approved in October, and no one ever had any concerns from the city about any issue on that property. Not one single time. Some of the landowners in the area that oppose this rezoning mentioned things like noise violations there's never been a noise violation ticket issued to this property. The folks who are opposed to the use as you see it, that don't like it the way it is right now, regardless of what happens tonight, have called the city about multiple things like the grading that's going on and the noise violations. The city hasn't found any violations. In fact, at the Planning Commission, a representative from the city engineer's office said that the grading permit, that not only has my client done everything that's been required of them, but they've even done more to make sure that they're complying with a grading permit. So the opposition put up a slide that showed grading going on, and he mentioned that that's like showing a slide of a house that's been framed but doesn't have any windows and say there are no windows in the house. The grading permit is open. It's not finished. When it's finished, there'll have to be grass put over it, but it's not done yet, and that's in compliance with the city's code. The other thing so what happened then is starting in late 2016, so more than a year after the expansion was approved, the buildings were built out. After complaints from neighbors, the city code enforcement folks did go out there and they wrote some tickets. And I'm going to read you verbatim from the ticket that was filed that we had to go to court on. This is what was cited: parking on the grass, screening wall required, screening for material required, and screening for storage required. Everything that I just read to you, those are requirements of a commercial zone. There's no screening required, or material, or wall, or storage in an agricultural zone. This property is zoned A1. At that time, and this goes to address the bad neighbor idea, I had multiple meetings with Ernest Cate, Misha Wagner. I met with Patsy Christie, and we walked in and with my client, and we said, what do we need? We want to be in compliance on this property. What do we need to do? If there is a code violation, we're going to fix it. We met with Patsy and said, going forward on this property, what can we do? We've got about 1.5 acres that's behind all the substantial commercial improvements that you just saw. What can we do with that 1.5 acres? Well, we can't build we can't build any buildings to move storage inside unless we get the property rezoned. So when someone said in the last meeting, it doesn't take a rezoning to be a good neighbor, well, in a sense it does. We can't address some of the things that have been brought out unless we can get a building permit to address those things. In the end, the question here is whether or not that stretch of property that you see on the eastern side can be used for anything. There was also an issue brought up where some folks said that, this was spot zoning, and it's not. If you look at the zoning map of Springdale, Arkansas, and if you start going south on 412, from 412 on Highway 112, there have been exactly 2 properties that have been zoned at all. The absence of zoning is not zoning. So when they come into the city, like all these properties did as A1, they just haven't changed. There are 2 properties north of here that have been rezoned. One's been rezoned C5 and one's been rezoned MF16. The only reason that the neighbors aren't here complaining about that is because nothing's been built on them yet. But what does that tell you about the future of that stretch of road? It's either going to be C5 or an MF16 property. Just to the south of this property, 1,300 feet to the south, on the other side of the street, which happens to be in Taneytown, there is commercial property. This is always going to be a highway frontage property. It's always going to have the existing commercial use. I know that upsets some folks that would like to turn back the clock and have that green space there that was there prior to sometime maybe in the 1990s, but that can't happen at this point. So, if there's any way forward, the leaving it as A1 is not planning. If you ask what can be done, the Planning Commission will say maybe SF1 or SF2 residential development, which can't be done. So where does that leave us? If we can go back, Patsy, to the slides, we have some concept drawings of what the owner would like to do. this is essentially what it looks like now. If we go forward, you'll see that the only real change that we propose is that, well, there it is in the back. If you look in the back, there would be an additional building. What that would do is it would allow that building and a barrier behind it. There would be a screening wall behind it, a vegetative barrier to divide that property from the residential property to the north. And it would allow all the materials to be screened and everything to be inside to cut down on the things that to this point have been irritants for the adjoining property owners. Unfortunately, with zoning, we have to ask for a zoning before we can get a plan approved. If we could, we would say, try to have it all approved at one time so that you would feel comfortable knowing that this is the plan. But if you look at the front part of that property, you can see that the part that is left has limited uses anyway. This is one of the, probably the only reasonable use for that 1 acre or so of property going forward. So the bottom line, we're just asking for a rational, unemotional plan going forward with the last use of this property. My client couldn't be here. He's fortunate in the sense that he has the largest project he's ever had with his company going on in Fort Smith. We've said all along, I've tried to meet, I've met with the adjacent property owners that opposed it. I've tried to say to them, what can we do to make you happy? No one's given me any feedback other than, I think honestly, the only thing that would make folks happy is if we could roll up everything that's there and take it away. And I appreciate that in a sense, but it just can't happen. We think that this long-term will make their lives better, not worse, and that's what Mr. Backus is committed to. He will work with the city and the landowners to do any reasonable things that he can to screen this commercial property from their properties. And we ask that you overturn this and not leave this agriculture. If you have any questions of me, I'll be happy to do my best. All right.
Any questions for Mr. Lyle right now? Thank you, Steve. Stay close. You may, we'll open it up to any other residents.
Do we have a report from our planning director first?
Sure, about the commission, what the commission's decision? Sure, that's a good idea.
Would you mind including a little bit of the history as well?
Okay. First of all, let me,
I'm pretty sure you know the history, don't you?
yeah, I've kind of been around it a little bit. First of all, let me remind you, we are not rezoning this property specifically for this project. As you have heard me say, Planning Commission hears me say every time, whatever is allowed in a C2 zone is allowed at that location. So one of the first things we always do is go over what is allowed in a C2 zone. And if you don't mind, I'd like to make sure that you understand the other things that could go in at this location. Would be citywide uses by right, cultural, recreational, and health facilities, offices, studios, and related services, eating places, neighborhood shopping goods, other shopping goods, trades and services, automotive services, parking lot, temporary buildings, transportation services, healthcare facilities, and an indoor flea market. Those are the permitted use in a C2 zone. So we're really looking at the possibility of any of those going into that location because they could sell it tomorrow. We don't rezone it for this specific property. The Planning Commission reviewed this request and by unanimous vote recommended that it be denied. The property was annexed into the city with, at the time, a commercial business on there, we were told. We really don't have any way to prove that because we don't have any business license for that location, and so they were granted to have a non-conforming use. And that's how we got started with this. The idea of a non-conforming use.
They being the business that was there when it was annexed?
The business that was there when it was annexed is not the same business that it is today. Correct.
The current occupant.
Yeah.
The current occupant was allowed non-conforming use.
Right, because there was a business in the past when it was annexed into the city. So we went forward assuming that there was a business at that time.
And what kind of business was that previous one?
I believe it was a cabinet. You guys can probably tell me better. Sheetrock and painting. Okay, you can probably tell me better. I don't have any way to verify that because there's no business license. There wasn't anything, and there's a residential structure on that piece of property. they began to expand their buildings without a building permit. And so I think that's kind of how we got started into this whole process of an expansion without a building permit. So we, they had to come in and get a building permit. At the time, we had to determine whether or not they were expanding the existing nonconforming use. By ordinance, it can only be expanded 30%. And it has to be brought into compliance. So we went through that process. They were granted that they could expand up to 30% based on what the original business location was and what was being used. At the time that they came in at that non-conforming use, there wasn't anything that was discussed about outside storage in this additional area that they're looking at now. That wasn't included in anything that we discussed at that time. That's when they were required to do the paving so that they had paved parking, they had to finish up the buildings, they had to have paved driveways and that kind of stuff. That was a requirement for the non-conforming use to be expanded. Those improvements, I don't think actually were done until the time they came back to ask for it to be expanded more and looking at a different footprint of what the original size was of that piece of property.
Building permits are required even in A1, is that not correct?
Right. If you build anything, you have to get a building permit for it. That's correct, yes.
What happened on the second request for expansion?
They were denied the second request for expansion. They were looking at a different footprint, and that's when we talked about some of the ordinance says it can't be expanded more than 30%. The Planning Commission can't grant more than 30% either.
Without a large-scale development?
Even with a large-scale development plan, a non-conforming use cannot be expanded more than 30%. That's what the ordinance says there, and Ernest may want to comment on that.
At the time that their expansion of their non-conforming use was approved by the Planning Commission in October of 2015, they submitted a site plan
Right.
that said what they wanted to do, what the expansions were, expanding their buildings. They then came back in 2016 and applied for another expansion with the Planning Commission, expansion of the non-conforming use. That was denied by the Planning Commission, which left them to fall back on what had previously been approved in October of 2015.
Which was their expansion not to exceed 30% of their existing.
What was indicated on that site plan?
And they were looking at trying to expand the original footprint of what was the non-conforming use to start with. And so we've gone back and looked at the historical areas of that to see what was used before it came into the city, and that's kind of how we came to that determination. Planning Commission heard this, as I said, and denied the request unanimously. Yes, sir.
Was there an issue, though, about beginning work on the expansion before they actually had the approval?
Well, they actually had started expansion to the buildings without a building permit, and that's kind of how we got started with this. Now, they did come in and apply for a grading permit to do some fill in the back portion of this that was not included in that original non-conforming use, and I mean, that's an engineering question about the grading permit and what they intended to do with that at that time.
Is there ever a request to become C2 before?
Not until they filed this zoning request that
First
we heard.
time?
Right.
And non-conforming use, that's not designed as a permanent solution.
Correct.
So I'm just out of curiosity, why they would have gone for non-conforming use as opposed to going ahead and zone commercial and putting this business?
Well, I mean, I can't answer on behalf of the applicant, but they were expanding it not to exceed 30%, and at the time, we assumed that's what they wanted to continue with at that location.
Well, but there's no time limit on a non-conforming use.
No.
As long as so it can be,
It could stay
you know,
forever.
I
as
think
long
the
as it
goal
doesn't-
of a
yeah.
non-conforming use in theory is that eventually,
Or the current occupant on it.
yeah, it's for the current occupant.
As long as it doesn't sit vacant for more than 6 months.
Right, once it's vacant for more than 6 months, it can't reopen as a non-conforming use.
But theoretically, you could purchase a piece of property and say, well, I don't think we could get that rezoned commercial, so let's just go with a non-conforming. And then you come back later and ask for an expansion up to 30%.
And you could
And then
continue.
you come in later and say, well, there's no way this property could be used for anything else because we've made all these improvements to it.
Well, I don't think you can I couldn't make that argument because the idea of a non-conforming use is never to be expanded beyond 30% with the idea that it's non-conforming. It's not to stay. I don't think that's grounds to say, well, because I expanded it 30%, I spent this amount of money, I ought to go ahead and get the
Now, it
rezoning.
can't be used for anything else.
I can't make that argument for it. I mean, it's listed on the land use plan as residential. If you look, there's large lots, large houses around that. It's been that way a long time. It was on that way before it was annexed to the city. If it was me, I'd go look at the land use plan before I bought it and got it too much invested in it. But I've been doing this all my life, so I probably have a little bit different approach than everybody else does when you go look at a piece of property too, so.
And this is not in the overlay district, but it is part of the expansion that I think, a couple of years ago, the council decided if we expand, this area will be included in it.
It was in the original design of the overlay district for that entire area. We did pull it back to do the actual overlay district to start with, so an area that was a little bit more manageable. But I think long-term wise, I think we look for this whole area to become part of that overlay district. When you guys are ready to do that, we can talk about moving that forward to the next area of it. I mean, we're waiting on 56th Street, some extensions of street projects to change the development patterns in that before we got into major expansions of that, so. Anything else?
I wouldn't go too far.
Oh, I'm not. I'm not leaving.
I'll open it up to the audience. Any of you, yeah, sure, come up, name and address. And
Clint McLean, 2082 South Meister Road. Patsy, can you pop up that? I'll go quick here because I don't want to labor it. I do think you guys have made some very important points, such as when this property was annexed was in 2011. There was a very small business there, which actually only occupied. If you look at this picture, you can see there's two-tone on the big building. That one little gray spot was the original building, and we called the previous owner, and Mr. Stuckey, and we said, what part of this property did you use for your business? And if you look at it, it's that one little gray spot, and he ran a small group out of there to run paint. The bigger building he used for his boat. He had a large boat. And then he went bankrupt at some point, and the property was foreclosed on. It's interesting, you made the point earlier that 6 months is the lag period. We have provided, as a city, an enormous amount of grace to our friends next door. There was an 8-month lag period with the grandfathering. Typically, the idea when you grandfather something in, as it's been explained to me, is we're trying to make sure as a city we don't annex in property, have a business owner there and unduly burden that young business or that business and saying, we annex you in, you can't continue to exist. This is a situation where we actually had a business that existed, was gone for more than 8 months. Another person purchased the property, albeit at a great value, I believe, and said, hey, I can run a business out of this. At that point, it was zoned, and I'm not a zoning expert. My understanding doesn't just exist, it is zoned A1, and it is already zoned A1, and in theory, we could have, as a city, said, no, you can't do that grandfathering because you're a new business that's been an 8-month lag. We did that. We allowed it to occur. No sweat. I wasn't there to stop it. We didn't. We issued the business license. The non-conforming use was expanded. Questionably, it expanded significantly at that point. We actually had a second expansion request, as you know. You can't go beyond the 30%. I'm not even sure what we asked for a second. While there have been no tickets for noise violations, we simply stopped calling because what happens is that we have noise that occurs, and what it is these guys aren't jerks. They're trying to run a business. And they load up their property. They load up their equipment for the day, which typically occurs between 6 and 7, banging around, making the noise. And then if you pick the phone up and call the police, this is not exactly a murder taking place. 20 minutes later, they show up. It's over. It's quiet. And we get that, and we understand it. It's just we ceased to call because it seemed like a nuisance to the city. I could literally call every single day at 6 a.m. There is going to be more than 70 decibels of noise, and I've tested it with a noise meter just for giggles because you can put it on your iPhone, and it happens every single day. It's just, I don't want to be a jerk. I could be a jerk, but I choose not to be a jerk. Maybe. That's questionable at times. The grading permit, I agree with. We're not here to debate the grading permit. What I think the statement on the grading permit is, yes, according to city code, we cannot stop a grading permit. I just ask you guys, as good neighbors, would you leave red dirt open for 18 months next to your neighbors? Or would you move forward with your grading permit at a reasonable pace and get it covered up? I don't believe the city wants us to have red dirt open, so that is the point about the good neighbors is, yes, it is completely within city code, and I don't disagree with that. And the only thing I ask is that the erosion control be done appropriately, but it has been a long period of time. Last, I just want to make a point that they were voted out. Next slide. You can actually go to the next one after this. The one thing, we keep making the statement, which I actually think is false logic, which is, you know what, it's 112, it's highway frontage, so therefore it will be commercial. Guys, we have a city plan, and this actually isn't on the plan as commercial. And as you'll note, I put some circles on that page. There's 20 houses on New Hope, more than 20 houses. There's more than 20 houses across the street in Tawnytown. There's about 20 houses in Western Trails. If I expanded this out a little bit further, you would see there's Freedom Place and Deering, which has another 40 houses in it. If this is going to be commercial, there's a substantial number of houses that are going to need to be knocked down. And these aren't exactly bulldozed houses you want to grab for the lots. These are high-end, expensive homes that have been built, most of them in the last, well, anything north in the last, 10, 15 years. And then New Hope has been a residential community for over 30 years, and there's several people who have lived almost that long. So I think it's important to say, while simply saying, hey, it's a highway, it's going to be commercial, that seems to be false logic. I do recognize that there are a couple of places where we have gone ahead and zoned, but it seems to be in alignment with what you're doing with the ballpark as you're cutting it across to 112. I understand that. But the vast, vast majority, as you head north on 112 until you get to the 412 interchange, is residential. And there's houses there. So we need to be realistic about that. Again, I just think it's false logic. Master plan, it's in the overlay district. I won't belabor that point. Hit the thoughts page if you would. Just kind of click a couple. I think one more. It is done, zoning is done to protect us from intrusive use. This is coming right out of the city's documents. This is why we do zoning. When I moved into this house, my wife looked at me and said, what about those buildings up there? By the way, they were vacant. And I looked up, and I'll never forget I made this comment. I mentioned it earlier to Kathy. She said, what could happen there? I go, don't worry, we're in the city limits now. It's not like it's just going to go rogue. She periodically reminds me of that as we're sitting at the pool and there's dust rolling over from the red dirt. It is not unjust to limit this land use. The reality is Mr. Backus is a businessman who's got an attorney who knows very well how to read and could identify this was zoned, what the limitations were on that. He can understand very clearly that when he had a non-conforming use, there were limitations to that non-conforming use. And by boxing himself in to say this is no longer worth anything else if I don't use it for commercial, I mean, that's a sweet game of chess to be able to say, I'm going to box myself in and say, then you've got to do what I ask. But those were his choices. My choice, which, by the way, I think I did very logically, was to move into an area that was zoned appropriately for what I have and make a substantial investment in that home. And there are others here who have made substantial investments in their home, and we are living within the confines of that zoning. And you know what? Actually, if you want to drop a large business next to mine, it actually lowers my property values significantly by as much as a third, and that's real money. So yeah, it is a reality, and it's not unjust to say you can't use your property for what you want to use. The reality is we all live in a community, and we all limit how we use our property by living in those communities. We do that for the greater good of the community. I can't play my music too loud. Like, those are rules, right? I'd love to play music really loud, but I choose not to because we live in a society and we live in a community, and I'm restricted by that, and I deal with it. The Annex 1 provides orderly transition. It's not just a non-zoning. I would argue it is specifically in our city code that it's there to provide orderly transition of urban development and encourages single-family large tract home. What do we have here? A ton of single-family large tract zones. So I look up and go, this is exactly what it's for, and what we're trying to limit is crazy spot zoning. And I actually do believe this is I'm not an attorney. Sorry, I didn't have time to drop by law school. Probably couldn't have got in. But the reality is, if I read the internet, which seems to be the end-all be-all, it reads exactly like what I would call spot zoning, and maybe others can comment to that. And look, the reality is we cannot do it for just this property. I think Patsy makes the powerful point of this could be a neighborhood market. If you rezone this C2, it could be a neighborhood market. I forget the name of the facility. It could be Piney Woods or Piney Creek, whatever the name of that healthcare facility is. I know it kind of makes everybody twinge a little bit, but that's our reality. Once we rezone this, you cannot undo it. It becomes a reality that we have to live with whatever's there. So I beg of you guys, for the good of the overall community and for just justice overall, that you not overturn this. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks. All right. Anyone else?
Roger Branscombe, 6485 New Hope. I'm just adjacent the property, the Backus property, and I'm probably 150 yards from there. And I just want to kind of expand on what Clint said about the noise violations. It's not just 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. Concrete is poured as early as possible. If you know anything about construction, it's got to hit the ground as soon as the sun comes up, 6 o'clock. So they're out there at 4 o'clock in the morning, loading their trailers, loading their equipment, backup beepers. I hear it. I've called a number of times, both early in the morning and 8, 9 o'clock at night, when they're doing the same. Every time a dump truck dumps on this grading permit, the tailgate comes down and makes a boom. It sounds like a cannon. And this goes on sometimes all day long till 8 o'clock, 8, 9 o'clock at night. They run a huge rolling, vibrating compactor on the top of that. I feel it in my house. I hear it and I feel it 150, 200 yards away. The grading permit, this is not grading, this is a dump. They're taking the material from job sites and dumping it there. There's probably, I was in commercial construction for a number of years. There's a couple $100,000 worth of dump material there that they're not having to pay to dump somewhere else. They're making money out there. This is not a grading permit, this is a dump. There are slabs of concrete that are 10 foot by 10 foot, as big as you can get in a dump truck. If they were to try to build on top of that, UBC codes would not let them build on fill that has pieces that big. When I built, I had to keep my fill material to a certain size, and there many times. So even if they tried to build on that, I would certainly resurrect the pictures that I've taken of those large slabs and submit those to the city and make sure the engineers know what they're trying to build on top of. Large material creates voids, it erodes, it sinks. You can't put structures on top of that. So I just want to kind of expand on that. We have been calling over and over again. I don't even think the police come anymore, because like you said, by the time they get out there, it's usually an hour from the time I call to the time the police come out. And maybe they've shut it down, maybe they haven't, but we're getting tired of it. We're getting tired of calling, so we just stop. It's not doing any good. So, thank you.
Thank you. Someone else?
My name is Larry Manette, and I live at 6447 New Hope Road, directly across the street from this. As Roger said, it's a dump for salvage concrete, but basically. But the traffic is so bad out there right now. It's backed up all the way down to just about to the church sometimes on New Hope Road. It's backed up all the way down 112. You can't turn there on New Hope and 112. It's just impossible. You've got coming up that hill. You've got a traffic problem there, and I don't see any help for that in the next near future. I know there's plans somewhere down the road, but that don't do anything for the next 3 to 5 years probably. But it's dangerous. It really is, and it's bad. I can't even get out of my driveway to get on New Hope Road sometime because the traffic backed up. So, but that's not a suitable business for that community out there. It's just not. It just doesn't fit. It never did, and it's gotten out of hand. And you can't stop it once it gets started at the stages that it's in right now. You're just about to the point where you can't stop it, and it's just gonna materializing there. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Anita Ford, and I live at 6377 New Hope Road. And I have a couple of items. My husband worked 39 years for a local manufacturing company, and I worked 43 years for a local utility company. I believe we are fairly representative of the 20 to 25 families that live in the vicinity of the rezoning. Both husbands and wives had worked to have the homes that we have and enjoy, and our homes represent a large portion of our life savings. We are all concerned about our homes' property values decreasing greatly if the rezoning for this construction company is approved. Number two, a couple of years ago, New Hope Road was resurfaced. 2 or 3 weeks after work was completed, I noticed that the 2 yellow lines designating the middle of the road were not put back in place. I contacted the city of Springdale, and I was told that New Hope Road was not wide enough to be considered a 2-lane road, thus they would not put back the 2-lane striping. We have dump trucks carrying red dirt and concrete pieces to the property asking for rezoning, semi-trucks from this company, and they have a lot of pickup trucks, of course, coming down this narrow road. Now, they are not the only ones using New Hope Road. We also have school buses coming down New Hope Road morning and afternoon, and I am very concerned about a potential very hazardous accident out there. And by the way, when you come off of 112 onto New Hope, there's a sign designating no trucks. We have also called the police quite a bit about that, but as the gentleman said, by the time the police get out there, the trucks are nowhere to be seen, but they use it a lot. Thank you.
Phone's ringing.
Hello, my name is Sue. And I just appreciate you listening to us tonight. And some very good points made. My husband, Doug Parks, and I live at 6198 New Hope, and we also own 6180 New Hope. We have $500,000 of real estate out there. So we have a big investment in this. One of our big concerns is how that pad is being heavily reinforced and how tall it is. What could go on that pad in the future? If it's not a building, we're fearful it could become a concrete mixer pad. Highway 112 is going to have a great deal of construction going on as it is widened. Will those big trucks continue coming down New Hope Road, and may it even increase, just as this lady talked about? We have trucks that literally climb our big trees because they come around those curves too fast, and if you see a big truck and you try to get out of the way, you're going to go off the road. I think my biggest point, though, is it seems to me like we're skipping commercial and going to industrial. When we talk about commercial in that area, and this is something I think Patsy Christie keeps coming back to, is we're looking at offices and shops and retail businesses, not something like this. And according to the design shown for New Hope, from 56th Street to 112, this may well stay agricultural and residential, as traffic is going to be diverted from New Hope. So most of the folks that live on 56th Street, we have plans to stay there. That's our home. Most of us have been there. How many of y'all have been there longer than 15 years? And there's a lot of other people that aren't here tonight. This is our home. We have dedicated our lives to building a nice piece of property out there. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Sue. Someone else? You may. Hey, Tom.
Thank you, sir. My name is Tom Kicklack. I'm an attorney I practice in Springdale, Arkansas, in South Thompson. My client, Cheryl Tyson, lives on 2171 South My Street, across the street from this property. I want to be very brief. I think you all have heard a lot of good information. It does seem to me that the way it was put to you, you've almost been blamed for causing the situation that is causing the applicant to come before you, and I invite you to reject that analysis. Instead, I think it's much more like the old proverb of the turtle's nose, or the camel's nose in the tent. You've left the camel's nose, and now he's going to come in the tent and kind of take over. The city has the right and the responsibility to determine land uses. This city has done that through its land use plan. This is clearly planned, as your staff has told you, to be residential. It would be improper to zone it commercial at this time. You've heard about increased noise, increased traffic, increased dust, safety problems, safety concerns with school buses and traffic out there. In addition, it's just not the right use. One of the reasons it's incompatible, besides with the land use plan, is that it does border a tiny town when it is incompatibly zoned. If it were to become commercial, that would require Tawny Town to assent to that zoning through a resolution. Nothing like that has been done, and so quite frankly, it's not possible to rezone it because of that as well. I did want to echo Ms. Christie and make sure that you've been told by counsel that his client is in Fort Smith for the biggest job of his career. He already needs to grow before that big job happened. He's been trying to do this for months. He's going to grow out of this property, and when he sells it, it's going to be either automotive repair, automotive service facility, or groceries, recycling collection facility. These are the things that'll be a matter of right. They won't have to come and get permission from you or the Planning Commission. Those will be uses as a matter of right. And that's just one of the many reasons that the rezoning is inappropriate. Thank you very much, and I hope I haven't taken too much time.
Thanks, Tom. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
I'm Gene Ellison. I live at 2201 South Maestri Road, basically just across the road and down from this property. I appreciate last week that, or a couple weeks ago when we had this meeting before with the Planning Commission, talking about how much money that the property owner had spent on this up to this point, and that the problem is that all of this money has been spent unapproved. He should have got the rezoning done before he started all this work. Yes, he spent a lot of money, and I hate to say it, but too bad, so sad. Also, as a neighbor, I haven't lived there nearly as long as a lot of you, and I appreciate how long you've lived there. But I can tell you, since I bought this house in 2012, I have spent every waking hour and every dollar I can scrape together to remodel this property. And for the property value to go down at this point, it's breaking my heart. I just can't see that happening. A lot of good neighbors, there's a lot of nice properties around there, and it's time that we did the right thing, turn this down, and then see what happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Our city attorney has expressed the desire to have a decision one way or the other from the council. So do we have a motion?
Mayor, I'd like to know, what's going on with the grading. That, something doesn't sound right there.
Brad, can you give us some background on the grading permit, your department, and your dealings with Backus?
A grading permit was issued for fill on the, about an acre, acre and a half out behind. They've been in compliance with that permit. Eventually, they'll have to grass it, but as some of them have stated, we don't have a period for a grading permit. There's not a termination date for a grading.
Microphone.
What about fill?
Fill is a
Part of the
grading
grade.
permit.
What's considered fill, though, if some of that's so big that you're not gonna be able to?
It's all in compliance. It's concrete, it's rock, it's dirt, and that's allowed. I've talked to several of the folks out in that area and explained it to them and suggested that they come to committee to discuss it. If an ordinance change is appropriate, why, that would be probably the place to discuss that.
So Brad, a grading permit can go on forever?
Forever.
In your opinion, is that a good process for the city to have, unlimited time for a grading permit?
Probably not.
Should they not have a site plan when they submit
They
a
do.
grading permit?
They do have a site plan, that's part of it. And they,
With the elevations of what the finished
Yeah.
grades are going to be,
And
but
this-
there's no limit on how long it can take them to do it.
that's correct. They're
They're-
approaching their
they're all
fill
within-
limit soon.
I was gonna
But
say, they gotta be getting close to their limit.
They are. The last time we went out there, they were 1.5 feet low in one area and maybe 3 feet in another. But until they get to that final grade and grass it, they can keep it open indefinitely.
What happens if they don't grass it?
They'll have to.
What happens if they don't?
We'll write them a ticket.
We do require erosion control.
We do, yes.
Okay.
And when they get part of it to grade, they'll have to grass that part, but literally they could keep part of it open
They
for a long
essentially
time.
could, if they decided to, sit there for 6 years and not do that. That's not erosion control. That's, you know.
Well, they can keep, they're inspected monthly and every time we get a phone call. So if they want to keep that up for 6 years, they could do it.
If we, okay, go ahead, Kathy. Okay. We have a motion and a second to uphold the planning commission's denial. Okay? Any other comment or anyone else? All right, Denise?
Evans? Reed?
Yes.
Jaycox? Culver?
Yes.
Watson?
Yes.
Overton?
Yes.
Fulfer?
Yes.
Lawson?
Yes, ma'am.
Planning Commission's decision to deny the rezoning is upheld 8-0.
Okay, thank you. Item 8, Street and CIP Committee Report and Recommendations. Chairman Rick Evans. Rick?
We have two resolution and ordinance on the agenda tonight. We had a meeting last week, and all three of them were brought to the council recommended for approval. And the first one is a resolution authorizing the acquisition of vehicles for the fire department.
And, Council, I wrote in the ordinance to waive as A1. I mean, we can, I guess we need to handle those separately anyway.
I
But it,
don't have a problem with that.
However you want to do it.
do it either way? On the resolution, yeah. Okay, any other comments on the resolution?
Move the resolution pass.
Second.
Okay, any other comments?
So we're not changing the numbers here?
Not in the resolution.
This is just a resolution to authorize acquisition. Doesn't have anything to do with,
The ordinance to
approving the
waive will
numbers.
have the numbers in it, or at least the documentation.
Wait a second, are we talking about the resolution on page 53?
What else is?
I don't know, I'm not looking at my iPad. Yes?
Yeah, 53.
So it does have a number in it. That's
Yeah, it does. That's the
It doesn't-
same number. yeah.
It's not changing any.
the number
And that's
is
not changing. The ordinance will, that you're presented later will fall within that number.
Okay.
Okay? All right, any other comments or questions? All right, Denise?
Okay,
Whoop, whoop,
so,
whoop,
I'm
whoop.
sorry, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
that's all right.
If whatever ordinance we consider later, if the number is less, that doesn't affect this resolution, even though it says we're hereby appropriating 293.
Right.
This was a not to exceed number.
It doesn't say that, Mike.
I know it doesn't say that, but that's.
Yeah. Basically, the numbers that you're seeing in the ordinance that's coming out is the cost of the vehicle. We still have radio installation, lights, the striping package that we put on it for the two-tone color to reduce the ability to get hit, hopefully. So all that still has to come out of that as well. So what you're seeing for the ordinance is just the price of the vehicles.
I'd like to
No,
make it,
but we're looking at the resolution is my problem.
Resolution includes all of that.
I'd like to propose a amendment to the resolution so that the resolution reads a not to exceed number of 293,000, which would cover
That's fine.
the
You
concerns.
made the motion to approve the resolution. You want to amend your motion?
You amend it to that?
I'll amend it to that.
Okay.
Got the second, it's the same thing?
Who's seconding? Rick, you good with that?
I'm good.
With that amendment to the
Yes.
motion? All right, a not to exceed number of that number. All right, any other comments? All right, Denise?
Yes.
Jaycox? Culver?
Yes.
Watson?
Yes.
Overton?
Yes.
Fulfer?
Yes.
Lawson?
Yes, ma'am.
Evans?
Yes, ma'am.
Carries 8-0.
Now, why don't we go ahead and move to that ordinance?
Okay, the next one to be an ordinance to waive competitive bidding for the purchase of 3 vehicles. That is the one that was added to our agenda.
Move the ordinance pass.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other comments or questions for Chief?
This is coming out of the CIP.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Just so you all know about the ordinance, we were fully intending to use the state bid, which we usually do when we purchase vehicles. But we learned very quickly when we called the state bid people that they don't have any vehicles left for the 2017 models, and it's going to the 2018s for the most part, so we're really struggling to try to figure out how to do that. That's why you see the waiving of the competitive bids, because we don't have an option other than to go out and try to find the vehicles on the lots, which we have done locally,
Right.
so.
Okay. All right, Denise?
Jaycox? Culver?
Yes.
Watson?
Yes.
Overton?
Yes.
Fulfer?
Yes.
Lawson?
Yes, ma'am.
Evans?
Yes, ma'am.
Reed?
Yes.
Move the emergency clause be adopted.
Second.
Culver?
Yes.
Watson?
Yes.
Overton?
Yes.
Fulfer?
Yes.
Lawson?
Yes, ma'am.
Evans?
Yes, ma'am.
Reed?
Yes.
Jaycox?
Both the ordinance emergency clause carry 8-0.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Chief.
And next, we have an ordinance to waive competitive bidding for the purchase of laptops for the police department for the cars. And that is not to exceed $27,750. It was approved by council in our meeting.
Okay.
Make a motion, ordinance pass.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Frank's here if you got any questions, any further questions? I know we discussed it in committee quite a bit.
Glad you can make it, Frank.
Okay? No comment? Go ahead.
Watson?
Yes.
Overton?
Yes.
Fulfer?
Yes.
Lawson?
Yes, ma'am.
Evans?
Yes, ma'am.
Reed?
Yes.
Jaycox? Culver?
Yes.
To have an emergency clause, move the emergency clause pass.
Second.
Overton?
Yes.
Fulfer?
Yes.
Lawson?
Yes, ma'am.
Evans?
Yes, ma'am.
Reed?
Yes.
Jaycox? Culver?
Yes.
Watson?
Yes.
Both the ordinance emergency clause carry 8-0.
Okay, Rick, before we move on to item C, or actually, we're moving on to item C. Well, we'll go ahead and start the discussion, and then I know Tom is here from the Apollo and wants to address the council at some point during this discussion. You've got supporting documentation here, and I know, Brad, you've been gathering some numbers? Okay. Well, these documents, this is the resolution for the MOU. Will you come up here and give us their, and Sam, I know, is here too, and his budget may be impacted, it will be impacted by this if it's approved. Rick, you want to go ahead and read the resolution?
From one that we got sent to us. Resolution authorizing the mayor, city clerk to execute memorandum of understanding with the Springdale Water Department, is that what we're talking about? And Sewer Commission for the streetscape improvement to Emma Avenue pursuant to the downtown master plan.
Okay, and just to give the council a little more background and refresh everybody's memory, we have this is the same MOU that we executed with the Water and Sewer Commission when they took on the project of East Emma.
Yes.
And we are doing the streetscape portion under their contract. We're reimbursing them for that portion. And what we're asking to do, since Crossland has agreed to do the work from Blair to Shiloh on Emma in front of, to do that as a change order, thereby we believe saving us some money and time, then the water department's willing to go ahead and put that under the same contract as a change order. And
that's why what came to committee was a resolution like we would normally do it as a city project. But then Ernest pointed out that that was actually a Springdale water project, so the proper way is to amend the MOU. As
Treat it
opposed
just like we did East Emma, just adding the West Emma part.
Right. And the money for this project, we've got trail and sidewalk money that will pay for the East Emma portion. And then a portion of that money will be used, as far as it goes, to this section of Emma, from
Yes.
Blair to Shiloh. And the rest will come from CIP or possibly some from Sam's overlay and mill budget.
There's a potential that while the asphalt contractor is there, we'll get a price to extend the overlay down in front of the Jones Center, maybe as far as 265 while they're already there. And if so, that would come from Sam's overlay budget.
So basically, we're looking at we had $1.9 million in the street or the trail and sidewalk money set aside in Sam's budget. So we got the 1.9. Both of these projects added together, we've been told will be about 2.4.
Right.
So that's what we're looking at. A possibility at the most of $500,000 out of CIP to go ahead and do this project. Add this project to the other.
How much would come out of the sidewalk?
We'd be taking 1.9 out of the sidewalk.
400,000 comes out.
Yeah, 400,000 toward this project, because you're looking at, well, actually about 500,000, almost 500,000
I
out of this
thought
project.
535 was coming out of CIP and 400,000 is coming out of because it was going to deplete the sidewalk, as I understand it, our conversation at the committee meeting.
Is that right, Brad?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I was
Yeah, we
looking
were
at the
trying
total
to
number. Yeah, okay.
Make all the numbers balance, but.
Okay. All right.
So I can't remember, did we just forward this without recommendation?
Yes.
No, we voted on it.
We voted on it as long as we had the figure when they came in.
What?
As long as the figure was the same when they came back with it.
Right. That's what, it was sent to the council with recommendation for approval.
And we asked for the figures.
Just make sure we were right on it.
There was also some discussion, I'm sorry, about the possibility of Sam possibly doing some intersection work.
I think that's where I don't remember that, but I do remember that what we're talking about now is in that larger number of the 1.4 or 5, whatever it is for East Emma, that includes overlay all the way out almost to the Jones Center.
No, the issue that I'm referring to was, there was some question as to whether or not we would take it through the intersection of.
Oh, that was an alternate on this piece, yes.
Correct, yeah.
Right.
And-
And is that in that number? So that
That's-
could
that's
be
in the-
taken off if we.
Well, and that's what
yeah.
I asked, was
Yeah.
there any possibility that Sam would be able to do that little portion? It might not be a whole
Is that
lot.
just overlay?
Yeah.
What's gonna be done in the intersection?
Some
Then we
mill and
could treat
overlay.
we could treat it the same way we may treat the other, or we don't have to do it we don't have to do it as part of this project.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
I was hoping Sam could tell us whether he could do that. He can't tell us tonight?
I'm not sure, Sam, you weren't here, and I'm not sure you're as familiar with that intersection that we're talking about.
Is it, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with it. Is it just an overlay of the existing roadway?
It'd be an overlay of,
Of an intersection.
Yeah.
would that be Blair?
I think it is
At
Blair.
both ends. At
Well,
Blair and
I'm focusing on the west end, Brad, right now.
Yeah.
That's
That-
Blair, isn't it?
No, the west end would be Shiloh.
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 Well, we have a paving machine and a crew, so as long as we have some
And
money.
if we don't do it as part of this project, it would work into your normal program
Yes.
next year. So,
That's correct,
right,
yeah.
okay.
The
No
money
problem.
to do those is in the 2.4 million if you elect.
So that, what you've got is the worst case. That's if all that's included in the project.
Well, if there's any way of saving some money out of CIP and letting Sam do that, I think that's what we ought to do. That
We can do that.
intersection, the Shiloh intersection.
Yeah,
Is what
okay.
I'm referring to.
Well, I think we need
All
to
right.
look at all the numbers. Mayor, if I'm not mistaken, didn't we, weren't we told that we need, because money is tight, we need to transfer 2 million out of CIP into the general fund? At our last committee meeting?
That was already in there. The unreserved portion that you saw already
But-
accounted for that.
And this is gonna be $935,000.
Yeah, but it's not all out of CIP.
No, it's 400,000, which would deplete our Sam's sidewalk budget, which means there's no other sidewalks could be repaired. How far is it between Shiloh and Blair?
2 blocks?
It's 215 feet. And in this 935,000, we're going to spend $74,390 to engineer the drainage for 215 feet. And the contract is going to one of the owners of the Apollo. And if we look at these numbers are kind of astounding. We're going to have 2 $1,500 trash cans. I don't know what a $1,500 trash can looks like. And also, we're saying that we're going to put 8 streetlights in this section, when if you look at the section of street from Blair to Main Street, which is a few more feet than this, we put in 4. But we're going to put in 8 street lights here, and we're going to spend $50,000 for the electrical work for the lights, for these street lights, which seems,
Well, I strongly support putting streetlights in
well,
when
that's
we do
fine,
these
but
streetscapes.
why are we putting 8 in 215-foot section is my
I don't know how they
question.
measure out, but I'm sure they're the same distances that,
They're not the
that
same
we-
distance, because we just have 2 on either side of the street from Blair to Main.
well, that's a shorter distance.
No, it isn't, it's a longer distance,
From Blair to Maine?
yes.
Hmm.
And also, we're going to spend $20,000 for landscaping, and we're putting in $111,000 for contingency. Just seems like this is, I'm concerned about these numbers. I don't think we're necessarily getting our money's worth for the $935,000 for 215 feet of
And the 935 includes the contingency that you just mentioned.
That's right.
the-
It does, but
the
that's all
total.
part of this.
It is
What
part-
we're,
it
what
is.
we're going to be approving.
That's right.
Now, and if we're telling the contractor, here's what we got for contingencies, guess what? That's That's what, that's
No.
what we'll eat up.
No, that's
Well,
not been our experience.
I
Tom, will you
don't
come up
know
and tell
about
us,
that.
tell us a little about the Apollo?
Well, I'm happy to do that. My name's Tom Lundstrom. I live at 1327 Elm Springs Road. And I wanted to come tonight because I realized there was a discussion on Emma, and I know it's in front of the theater, but I'm not coming to advocate for that. I wanted to let you know what is happening on Emma Avenue, I think, in large part due to your efforts for things you are doing and things you are not doing. Most of us have been in Springdale a long time. We've seen efforts to revitalize Emma many times. And in my mind, the difference this time is it's not a top-down approach by the city trying to pound a square peg into a round hole. Instead, I think the city's doing what it should do, and you're creating an environment that attracts private capital. And in my mind, that is the difference on why Emma will be different this time as opposed to the many times before. The city, the Walton Family Foundation, the Springdale Water and Sewer Commission are all investing millions of dollars in infrastructure on Emma Avenue. That creates an environment that allows me and encourages me to risk my private capital to put in a for-profit business in this new environment that you're creating. The new form-based codes that you have passed are a wonderful step forward in helping vitalize, not revitalize, but vitalize this area of downtown Springdale. So I applaud the City Council for being very proactive in making investments in infrastructure and investments in an environment that attracts private capital. That alone will make this effort to revitalize Emma Street successful where they failed in the past. I'm very appreciative as a member of the Springdale community. Now, for something fun, I did want to just briefly tell you what's going on at the most iconic building on Emma Avenue. When you tell somebody that you are reimagining the Apollo Theater, they don't ask you where that is, they don't ask you what street, and they don't ask you what town. They know what street and they know what town. The Apollo Theater not only is the most iconic building on Emma, I think it is probably the most iconic building in Springdale and most well identified with the city of Springdale. When we decided to take on this project, we probably unintelligently bought 4 walls and a floor. There was no roof. And since that time, I think Mr. Reed can attest, he's seen the skeleton of what's coming, that a great deal of imagination, effort, and capital is being put into that building. And I can promise you, you will not believe what is behind those doors when they open on August 17th. We are turning the Apollo into an event center. We'll be able to seat about 320 people at a time in a banquet setting. There will be additional rooms for rent. We already have an extensive list of people wanting to pre-book. Just to give you an example of the excitement when we put the Facebook page up with the Apollo before we'd swung a single hammer, in 12 hours we had 1,400 likes. I think our likes are now up over 3,000, which just again shows you the intense interest in this facility in downtown Springdale. So on behalf of my partner, I would like to thank the City Council again for what you're doing and what you're not doing. It's working this time. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. What's the open date?
August 17th.
Okay, thanks. Other discussion?
What will our sidewalk fund be? Are we talking about depleting that fund, or is
We
it
would
a
deplete it,
portion?
but we put $1 million in every year. So
Okay.
we would be depleting it for this year, yes. Of course, the work wouldn't be,
For
Yeah.
the rest of this year.
right, right.
I think with my concern with it is, after the committee meeting, I started going back over some of the numbers that we discussed. It looks like the unreserved balance on the CIP was $3,097,456. And we're talking about shifting $2 million to the
No.
general.
It's already in there.
It's already in
So
there.
that's already with the $2 million.
That's already been taken out, which hopefully some of that will come back. Some does every year.
Do we know, I know we discussed some of the reimbursements that we didn't know about yet, if we were going to get those in for like the state project and Johnson Road. Did we find out if we were getting any of that back yet?
Wyman, were we able to find out any of that yet on those other items that are listed as, in our CIP account? Say that again, please.
Have it next committee meeting.
Okay. All
So,
right.
Mr.
But
Reed,
we're
what's our
adding
balance in CIP?
unreserved,
Yeah,
over 3 million.
so we've got $3 million.
That was before tonight. That was before the fire department. Yeah. And we add about 200,000 a month, approximately, into CIP. My feeling on this, and Tom kind of hit on it without hitting us over the head with it, but, you know, the project east of the railroad tracks, we were very, I think, wise in getting ahead of development as much as we could. And we know what happens. We know from Elm Springs Road, we know from Jean George Boulevard, we know what happens when we invest in public infrastructure in the right places at the right time. I believe that moving now to the section between Blair and Shiloh is the right time to invest in public infrastructure so that we stay ahead of a development as best we can. It's better, it's sure better, you know, what's happening on East Emma is gonna be great, but we're gonna have street work, we're gonna have streetscape work that's eventually gonna need to go on all down Emma Avenue. And I think we're in trying to stay ahead of the development that we already know is coming, then it's important to phase these in such a way that we can stay ahead of it. I hate to get behind the 8 ball now when we've got all the momentum that we've got downtown.
Wasn't there, I think Councilman Watson, wasn't there a fund that you had asked if we were gonna have to pay that this year? I can't remember what that was. Like it was about $400,000 that we would have to pay this year for a design maybe or something? I can't remember what it was.
You may be talking about Walter Turnbow Park.
Maybe. There was like $400,000 that we thought we might have to pay this year.
No, that's
Oh, yeah,
Dean's
that's what it
Trail.
was. That we might not pay this year, and we might pay it next year. We might not, so there might be more money. What was it? I can't remember, I'm sorry.
I think it's the Dean's Trail match with the Walton Family Foundation.
That's what it was.
And we're not sure, and Patsy wasn't able to be at the committee meeting, we don't know when we're gonna get asked for that. It's after the work's completed, and that hasn't even gone to bid yet.
The concern was, though, that if we had to pay it this year, that it was going to be difficult
And then we would pay CIP back
once we got it. Right.
Yeah.
I'm all for infrastructure.
I know.
The numbers.
Well, the times, hey, believe me, buddy, it's been lower than this. And so I think the council has been very wise in putting money where it spurs development, and I don't think this project's any different.
I make a motion the resolution pass.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further comments or discussion? Anyone in the audience? Okay, Denise?
Wolfer?
No.
Lawson?
Yes, ma'am.
Evans?
Yes, ma'am.
Reed?
Yes.
Jaycox? Culver?
Yes.
Watson?
Yes.
Overton?
No.
Carries 6-2.
Thank you. Back to you, Rick.
The last thing is a resolution approving the construction of a sidewalk on Maple Street.
This was forwarded with recommendation for approval, correct?
And this is for a 5-foot sidewalk?
For now.
I just want everybody to understand. My concern is that we have an opportunity, there's This very site is part of our trail system plan. We have the money, or I presume we do, from the school system to build their portion. In order to move this forward as part of the trail system, it would become a 10-foot sidewalk with curb and gutter, taking the parking off of Maple. If we do this 5-foot sidewalk, if the trail system is, let's assume within the next 3 to 5 years, included in this project, we have to tear it all out and start again. It becomes almost a waste of money. We're talking about, am I correct, about a $26,000 difference? Was it more?
Probably it's 12.5 they put in.
No, they put in
No.
21, I think.
Almost 24.
But I think I think the estimate for the 10-foot was
60.
65, I think. So it was a bigger
But didn't
difference
that,
than
but
that.
didn't that include the curb and gutter and removal of the parking?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, I understand why it was so much higher.
Well, I'm just trying to make it clear
Right.
that if I vote against this, that is the reason why.
Right.
Because I strongly suspect that this trail system is going to connect sooner rather than later. This is right by Murphy Park, the library, the hospital, the new sports stadium over by Springdale High School. So,
Well-
it just seems,
This is this has been we've
Conversation.
probably fretted over this a lot more than we should have, but it's an important issue, and it's one I think on which reasonable people can disagree.
I move the
Absolutely.
resolution be adopted.
Second.
Okay, thank you.
What was that motion?
We approve the resolution to build the 5-foot sidewalk.
I just
like
wanted
it
to be
came out
clear,
committee.
when my no vote comes, why it is coming.
Right. You're not voting against the sidewalk.
Not against the
Gotcha.
sidewalk.
You don't like sidewalks, do you, Ken?
Not at all, Jeff.
No.
I don't like landscaping either, so it's okay.
935 for 215 feet's okay, though. Yeah.
All
Thank you,
right.
Mr.
Does
Overton.
anyone, we have a motion and a second. Does anyone have a,
I had a question.
okay?
The language at the bottom of the resolution concerns me a little bit. Council approves the start of the sidewalk immediately after receiving the school district payment. I would have thought we already
I
had
thought
that.
we already have it.
Well,
That's
we
what I
don't
was
have
told.
it. I checked on that. They're not required, they could still build it if they want to. The waiver we gave them, if they want to, because the money's not due until the project's, and before we sign off on the project, right? That's when the payment in lieu of is due. So they could,
On project's completion.
yeah. So we can leave it up to them if they'd rather pay us, if this passes, then we can leave it up to them whether they'd rather pay us or they can build it.
Yeah.
I know that we've had a motion and a second, but I agree with Kathy here. I don't know why in the world that we would put this down and then tear it back out in a few years. Not for no more money than we're looking at for making it the 10-foot. We just voted to spend a lot of money on Emma Street, and this is as an important place as Emma Street to me. So I just don't know why in the world we would not go ahead and put in the 10-foot trail walk in this little section.
Okay. Other comments? All right, anyone in the audience need to speak to this one? All right, Denise?
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Evans,
No. No.
Jaycox,
No.
Culver,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Overton,
Yes.
Fulfer,
Yes.
Carries 5-3.
How about that?
How about that?
All right, that's behind us.
Oh, let's put it on the agenda again
Till we
next
build,
time.
it's behind us till we're ready to build the trail, anyway. Item 9, Risk Management Committee Report and Recommendations. Chairman Jim Reed. Jim?
I wasn't able to be there. I believe
Did that.
Rick Evans I did took it, that.
Okay, go ahead, Rick.
Go ahead and look it up real quick. Look the other ones. It's a resolution authorizing the insuring the city property with the Arkansas Municipal League Property Program, and this will save us money over last year. It was recommended for approval. With the resolution pass.
Second. Okay, we've got a resolution and a second, and a motion and a second, I'm sorry. And Don sat here riveted tonight by all this, just so he could speak to this if y'all need him to. So,
This
But-
shows you when we've got a good president of the municipal league, what kind of good benefits this city can have.
that's right. We are saving, what, Wyman? About 40? Yeah, over 40,000 a year. So,
Oh, good.
appreciate it.
We spent it earlier, so.
Yeah.
It's a good thing we're saving it now.
They would have built that 10-foot sidewalk, by the way.
Could have built the sidewalk,
10-foot
gentlemen.
trail. So, thank you all again. This is a good opportunity for us to get great coverage and save some money, so.
Didn't they cover the ORT,
They did.
and wasn't it a phenomenal?
And I don't want them blaming that on the city of Springdale, but they covered it. Yeah, it was a big ORT. Yeah, yeah. So it was in Springdale, but that wasn't ours.
Coverage was great.
But they did I know, they swallowed hard and did a great job on that. So, if there's no other comment, I'll ask for the vote.
Evans?
Yes, ma'am.
Reed?
Yes.
Jaycox?
Yes.
Culver?
Yes.
Watson?
Yes.
Overton?
Yes.
Pulfer?
Yes.
Lawson?
Yes, ma'am.
Carries 8-0.
All right. Thank you. Thanks. All right. Planning Commission report and recommendations by Patsy Christie, Director of Planning.
Before I start that, I just want to let you all know that we received our allocation from HUD on the CDBG money, and it went up $10,000.
Whoa.
Really?
Here, we were all
Yes,
thinking about
we
cuts.
were all
Yeah.
worried. They cut 7 programs in the state, and 6 of them got increases, and we were one of the ones that got increases. So
All right.
Wow.
Shows
can-
you how
well done.
well, seriously, it shows you how well that you handle our CDBG and what a good job Don does.
Don does a great
and
job.
has
It's a
for
great
years.
program. It is.
Does more with less
Yes.
than
Right.
anybody in the state.
He's
Just
got
does a real good
volunteers this week from one of the churches in Rogers doing work of painting and cleaning up yards for elderly property owners in town. And it's a great experience for them, and it's a great experience for the kids.
Yeah.
And it's a good program. Not everybody does that, but Don does a great job. He really does.
Yeah,
But
that's
the
good
good news
news.
is we got $10,000. So when we come back with you next time, everybody gets what we approved. And we got a little bit extra, and
Well,
We're amazed.
We approved extra this time.
yes, we
We did.
did.
So
We
that
approved
extra
this time.
10 would stay in the housing rehab.
In the housing rehab.
So it'd
Yeah.
about get us to where we,
And that's where
About
we
where
need
we
to
wanted
be.
to be
Right.
with that, yeah.
You knew it all the time, didn't you, Mayor?
yeah, I'm pretty good about that.
That's good leadership, that's all.
His connection in Washington must be better than
Yeah,
the rest
yeah,
of it,
right.
because that's not where we
Right.
want to get into. Okay, items on the agenda. The first one is a rezoning request for 2.71 acres located at 324 North 48th Street. This is a request to rezone the property from A1 to C5. Planning Commission reviewed this rezoning request and recommends approval. The title of the ordinance reads an ordinance amending ordinance number 3307, the same being the zoning ordinance of the city of Springdale, Arkansas, and the plat pertaining thereto, by rezoning certain lands from agricultural A1 to thoroughfare commercial district C5 and declaring an emergency.
Move the ordinance to pass.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of the ordinance. Any other comments or questions? Anyone here to speak to that? Need to? Okay. All
She's
right.
here, but she don't want to speak unless she just has to. I don't think we have any problems.
Doesn't sound like she has to. We'll see. Go ahead.
Reed?
Yes.
Jaycox?
Yes.
Culver?
Yes.
Watson?
Yes.
Overton?
Yes.
Pulfer? Lawson?
Yes, ma'am.
Evans?
Yes, ma'am.
Move the emergency clause pass.
Second.
Jaycox?
Yes.
Culver?
Yes.
Watson?
Yes.
Overton?
Yes.
Pulfer?
Yes.
Lawson?
Yes, ma'am.
Evans?
Yes, ma'am.
Reed?
Yes.
Both the ordinance emergency clause carry 8-0.
And y'all remember the reason why we bring emergency clauses, okay? I have to do this every time, right? Okay.
You're just doing that because Don's here.
That's right, because he's going to run right back and tell Mark Hayes that we.
Yeah, okay.
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 All right.
Okay. I can go over it every time if we need to, but yes, we've kind of established that procedure. The next is a request to rezone 1.3 acres located at 8727 East Wagon Wheel Road. This is to rezone a piece of property from A1 to SF1. Planning Commission recommends approval of this rezoning request. The title of the ordinance reads, an ordinance amending ordinance number 3307, the same being the zoning ordinance of the city of Springdale, Arkansas, and the plat pertaining thereto, by rezoning certain lands from agricultural district A1 to low-density, single-family residential district SF1 and declaring emergency.
You realize we didn't act on the
Do pass.
emergency clause.
Oh, you didn't act on the emergency clause? I'm sorry.
You didn't present it, so we didn't act on it.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah,
They
you
voted on
did.
the
Yeah, we
budget.
did.
We did.
We did.
That's why I
voted
said
on
it
it. Voted on
afterward,
it.
because you
You
didn't
voted
ask
for
me
it.
why, and.
Oh, I meant to vote
Good,
vote
I'm
against
not-
it.
I'm glad I'm not the only one.
Let's have a recount.
Must be a loose Chad.
All right, you read this one, Patsy?
Yes, I
Item
did.
B.
Yes.
Move the ordinance pass.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Anyone need to speak to this or got questions about this one?
I would have sworn we didn't.
Okay, Denise?
Culver,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Overton.
Yes.
Fulfer.
Yes.
Lawson.
Yes, ma'am.
Evans.
Yes, ma'am.
Reed.
Yes.
Jaycox.
Yes.
Move the emergency clause be adopted.
Second.
Watson,
Yes.
Overton.
Yes.
Fulfer.
Yes.
Lawson.
Yes, ma'am.
Evans.
Yes, ma'am.
Reed.
Yes.
Jaycox.
Yes.
Culver.
Yes.
Both the ordinance emergency clause carry 8-0.
The next item is a resolution authorizing a waiver of the subdivision regulations for a lot split that is located at 5015 Accident Road. They're actually dividing the track into 3 tracks. When you get to 3 tracks, it technically becomes a subdivision, and they're asking for a waiver of the subdivision requirements so that we can do it as a lot split. Planning Commission recommends approval of the waiver. Title of the resolution reads, "A resolution approving a waiver of subdivision regulations that's set forth in Chapter 112 of the Springdale Code of Ordinances in connection with lot split 1717, a lot split for Greg Winery."
Move the resolution pass.
Second.
Okay, we have a-
Anybody have any idea how that road got its name?
I agree.
What'd you say?
How that road got,
Anybody have any idea how that road got its name?
Accident lane?
Yeah,
Good idea.
It was an accident.
it was an accident.
I actually think
There's been
There
quite a
was-
few.
I think I
There was
remember that.
One when
several,
we were
as a
in
matter
high
of
school, but I
fact,
think
yeah.
it was already accident. Phil,
One was, one of our friends, high school
Building.
friends was
But
actually
it was
killed.
Yeah,
accident before
it
that.
was,
Oh, well, it was
Yeah.
accident before that.
It was back in the,
yeah, it
pretty
was back
serious
before that.
accidents out
30s
there
or
if you look at the
40s.
history.
Where Overton was born.
yeah.
That was an accident.
Accident lane.
Another accident.
I'm sorry, Mike, I could.
No, that's,
You gotta
I'm
admit that's
used to
pretty
your
good.
abuse, that's all
You
right.
gotta admit that's pretty good.
Don't worry about it.
Okay,
Lame, but that's okay.
all right. Yeah, I'm ready.
Overton.
I had a
Yes.
question.
Oh,
Okay, sorry.
If I wanted to, Patsy, if I wanted to go out and look at this property, how would I know where to go?
In the planning commission packet that you get a copy of, there is a map at the
But
very
it's
front.
not in the city council's packet.
But you get a,
Could we not put the
Doesn't
address
count.
in the resolution or something? I mean, even the vicinity map
okay,
has no address.
He's asked you over and over.
well, we send you a map in the packet that has everything marked on it so you know where to go get it. I'll make sure it gets added
Councilman
today.
Watson, you're not as significant as the planning
You're asking
commission.
me to
Just get
cross-reference,
over it.
surely, or what if somebody else looked at this resolution that didn't have the
Okay.
planning commission?
Yep.
I don't
All
know
right.
what LS 17-17 is.
We have a log that, I mean, I can track it all the way through if you want to see it, but,
I would just appreciate addresses.
okay.
We'll do that. All right, now we're ready to vote? Okay,
Overton.
Yes.
Fulfer.
Yes.
Lawson.
Yes, ma'am.
Evans.
Yes, ma'am.
Reed.
Yes.
Jaycox.
Yes.
Culver.
Yes.
Watson.
Yes.
Carries 8-0.
you're up.
This is an ordinance authorizing the city clerk to file a lien for the raising and removal of a structure within the city of Springdale, Arkansas, located at 1903 Powell. If you'll recall, the council passed an ordinance authorizing the raise and removal of the structure, and this is assessing a lien on the property for the cost associated with it.
So has it been done, I guess? Is that what we're doing?
It has been
Yeah.
done, and this is collecting the cost for the removal of the structure.
Move the ordinance pass.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further comments or questions? Okay, Denise?
Fulfer.
Yes.
Lawson.
Yes, ma'am.
Evans.
Yes, ma'am.
Reed.
Yes.
Jaycox.
Yes.
Culver.
Yes.
Watson.
Yes.
Overton.
Yes.
Move the emergency clause be adopted.
Second.
Lawson.
Yes, ma'am.
Evans.
Yes, ma'am.
Reed.
Yes.
Jaycox.
Yes.
Culver.
Yes.
Watson.
Yes.
Overton.
Yes.
Fulfer.
Yes.
Both the ordinance emergency clause carry 8-0. Next item is an ordinance authorizing the city clerk to file a cleanup lien for the removal of overgrown brush and debris property located within the city of Springdale, Washington County, Arkansas, 3378 Bryan Street and 1100 Old Missouri Road.
Okay,
I'll make a motion ordinance pass.
Second.
okay, we have a motion and a second.
Yes, it is, 1101.
What's that?
It is 1101.
11:01, okay.
So
Uh,
can we correct that?
You're welcome to come up and address the council now. You're here on 11:01 Old Missouri Road?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you for hearing me. Get where I can see this.
Speak right, you're tall, speak right into that microphone there,
Okay.
best you can.
On January 18th, code enforcement came into the park and took pictures of some violations and posted a notice on the door. Some of these pictures are of the same space, just from different angles. There are no addresses. Some of the spaces could not be identified. For an example, a piece of skirting laying next to a mobile home. There was no address, nothing, it just a piece of skirting laying on the ground. All identifiable issues were resolved. The cleaning was done within 7 days, most before the owner was notified. The owner lives in Texas. And here's some pictures of, or here's the official, or the first notice, if y'all want to look at that. The landowner is required to have the cleaning done within 7 days after being notified. Sometime it was in the second half of March, so we're several weeks later. Bobby Nevins from Code Enforcement notified me that he was going to be coming into the park for a reinspection. I asked him if he would give me a list of violations so that I could remedy them. He said yes. I resolved those issues as well. Here is a list of the violations that he gave me, just a handful. And here's a couple of examples of the complaints that they had, just a couple of pieces of wood underneath a porch. But that was all resolved immediately. On April 7th, the code enforcement came into the park at 9 a.m., going door to door, telling everyone that answered to put out any trash they had to dispose of. I located Bobby Nevins and talked to him about what they were doing. He explained that they were telling people to put trash out. I asked him how the park looked. He said it looked good, just a few minor things around people's porches, but nothing major. This is not an abatement. This is a bulky waste pickup. The city does not allow us, as the mobile home park, to participate in bulky waste programs. The April 11th abatement attached, or here. This is the abatement notice, or the letter following the abatement. Where was it?
They picking up the stuff that Bobby had the people put out?
Yes. They ended up taking 4 big containers, the big truck, out of trash. Now, if they would have just done the abatement, going, through people's yards, they wouldn't have had half of a truck. Because, like I said, most of the things were already resolved. When it came to these, some of these pictures, again, are of the same pile, different angles. There's a pile of paint and oil cans that was in my maintenance area, stacked and hidden from plain view. I have people throw cans away that the trash does not pick up. When I get a stack, I take them for recycling. I do not do it every time, as I would be doing it weekly. They took very few pictures of what it looked like beforehand. They had a mowing crew out mowing yards that did not need to be mowed. I received several calls and complaints regarding this. Why are they mowing my yard? I just mowed yesterday. I asked Bradley Klein, the supervisor, why they were mowing yards that did not need to be mowed. His reply was, it's a neighborhood standard. If your yard is taller than your neighbor's, it will be mowed. But if a yard was mowed yesterday, why would it need to be mowed today? I was mowing the yard in front of the office. I went to get gas. I came back, and one of the guys on a mower was mowing the yard. I was already mowing. He saw me there because he was in the yard across the street. it didn't necessarily need to be mowed because I was having trouble trying to follow my tracks to see where I'd already mowed. Bradley Klein, the supervisor of the abatement crew, wanted to go over my maintenance area with me to see what was good and what was trash. I was told by other code enforcement officers, by the way, I've been doing this for 18 years. I've had a couple incidents with code enforcement, and they were all resolved quickly. I was told by other code enforcement officers that I could have a maintenance area to keep blocks and other needed equipment for day-to-day operations. Klein told me if I wanted to keep the blocks, I had to put them in a shed. They could not be outside. I had things neatly stacked out of the way and hidden from view behind sheds, not causing any problems, such as poles for a canopy and metal roofing material. It was all taken. Now I have to go buy more poles and roofing material. And like I said, it was...
I'm a little concerned if we told them to put trash out now we're having them.
I addressed that with Misha, and to be honest with you, I'm trying to remember what the explanation was. There's another side to that. I'm not saying that, but what I would hope, and Misha can't be here tonight because she's sick. Ernest, is there?
I'd like to ask
Table
Mr.
this.
Lawson if he would amend his motion to remove, to only bring forward the Bryan Street address on this lien ordinance and table this one to give Misha time, because we didn't know she's going to be sick. So, and I'm sorry you had to sit through the whole
No
meeting,
problem,
but
no problem.
but-
I've enjoyed it.
we're within our 120 days to bring this forward, so there's no worry if we tabled this particular address till the July 11th meeting.
And we put it at the first of the agenda, so he won't have to wait the whole
Oh,
meeting.
no, I don't mind. I honestly, I don't mind. I enjoy this. My Tuesdays are free. Then I'm not as nervous standing in front of fewer people.
I'll amend my motion to withdraw this address and move it to July.
So it would just be the
Just be
address,
the
3378 Bryan
Bryan
Street would be on
Street.
the address.
And then you'll be up
Up next.
first meeting in July,
Okay,
July 11th.
July 11th.
July 11th, okay.
Appreciate you being flexible like that.
Not a problem.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so now we have a motion and a second for, who made the second of Mike's original motion?
Do a second now.
I might have, I don't remember. That was
Somebody second
5
Mike's
minutes ago.
I'll second it.
amended, we've got a second, Rick Culver, or Rick Evans.
I'll second it.
Well, we got several of them. Anybody need to speak to this property? I don't see anybody. Okay, go ahead, Denise.
Evans,
Yes, ma'am.
Reed,
Yes.
Jaycox.
Yes.
Culver,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Overton.
Yes.
Wolfer. Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Emergency clause be adopted.
Second.
Reed,
Yes.
Jaycox.
Yes.
Culver,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Overton.
Yes.
Wolfer.
Yes.
Lawson.
Yes, ma'am.
Evans.
Yes, ma'am.
The ordinance emergency clause, carry 8-0.
Okay, thank you, council. This was a good meeting. Patsy, tell us about tomorrow, about the public meeting. Make sure everybody knows.
In this room tomorrow evening will be the first of our public meetings concerning the criminal justice building design process. We're going to have site plans to start looking at how all this stuff fits together, get comments from the public on what they see and what they want to see in a downtown municipal campus. So it's from 5:30 to 7:30? Okay, 5:30 to however long it
whenever.
takes for us to just, we're
Okay.
not doing a real formal presentation, so you can come in and talk to the design team and city staff and talk about what you and what the public is looking for in a downtown municipal campus.
Right. Thanks, Patsy.
One other
got another
thing
one? Go ahead.
is the opening of Walter Turnbow Park,
Yes.
4th of July, 11 o'clock. If you haven't been out over there lately, I think the grass makes it look bigger. Every
Oh, my
time I go over
goodness.
there, it seems to look bigger with all that
The
grass and
grass
stuff
and
in.
the trees.
Those guys are working like little ants over there, really scurrying to have it done. It really is. But 11 o'clock on 4th of July, so.
And then followed immediately by the dedication of
Of
the
the-
Fallen Veterans Memorial.
Right, right.
Our Eagle Scout Hogan Masteries project.
Right. We encourage everybody to come downtown. There'll be some food trucks. There'll be some entertainment from the Art Center and just a good time to be in downtown Springdale on the 4th of July.
Thanks, Patsy. Any other comments from department heads? Council? City attorney?
No, sir.
Nothing from me.
Move to adjourn. Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. We're adjourned. Thank you.